Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we start the chapter on, we've been doing two videos on this. It's O-Level Biology 5090, Ecology chapter 15. Now this is the third video, which is going to be having material on malaria, pollution and conservation, which is the later part of this chapter. We've already done the first video in which we did the food chains and the food webs. And in the second video, we did the nitrogen cycle and the carbon cycle. And in the third video, now we're going to do the rest of this chapter, which is malaria, pollution and conservation. Now the first thing that we need to know about malaria is that it is a disease, malaria is a disease in which the causative organism is Plasmodium. So Plasmodium is the cause of malaria, and Plasmodium is a protozoa. Please remember, protozoa, it's not a bacteria. It's not a virus. So what is a protozoa? Protozoa is a unicellular animal. As you can see, I've drawn one here. There must be a cell membrane. There must be cytoplasm. Please remember, bacteria has cytoplasm, but a virus has no cytoplasm. And there will be a proper nucleus. And there will be proper chromosomes. Bacteria does not have any chromosomes. It just has a loop of DNA. And virus just has a strand of DNA. It's non-cellular. It's not even a cell. It doesn't even have a cell membrane. So please remember, Plasmodium is a protozoa. It is not a bacteria or a virus. Okay, then when I ask you a question in the class and I say, what is the cause of malaria? You say mosquito. Well, mosquito is the vector. So the female Anopheles mosquito, not all mosquitoes, not all gender. So it's only the female Anopheles is a type of mosquito. There are many types of mosquitoes in the world. So female Anopheles mosquito is going to be the cause of spreading it. It doesn't cause it. It's just the vector. Vector means this is the transferring agent. So it's going to transfer it from, I have suffered from malaria. So I have the Plasmodium inside my blood. And when the mosquito sucks my blood, it takes the Plasmodium with the blood, because the Plasmodium is inside the red blood cells. And then it multiplies inside the stomach of the mosquito and then migrates to the salivary glands of the mosquito. And then this mosquito sucks the blood of another person. So it injects its saliva, and the saliva contains the Plasmodium. So basically the mosquito is only transferring it from a person who's the sufferer to a person who's not the sufferer. Now, when we suspect, as a doctor, when we suspect a patient who is suffering from malaria, we will ask him for him to do a blood test. So somebody will come and take the blood of that person, and then we'll make a slide of it. And you can see here in the red blood cells, you can see all these large number of red blood cells. These are all red blood cells. And inside the red blood cells, you can see this structure inside it. It's called a ring-shaped structure, and the ring stage of the malarial parasite. Now, this of course is the white blood cells. We're not talking about this. We're talking about these. These are the red blood cells. And inside the red blood cells, you can see these purple thingies in it. And these purple thingies are the Plasmodium, which is even smaller and lives inside the red blood cell. Another slide would be something like this. So these are the ones where you have the infection. And this will, of course, prove the fact that this person is suffering from malaria, not from some other disease. So, of course, when the microscope developed, that is when we found out that actually malaria is caused by the Plasmodium, which goes and invades the red blood cells and then infects the person, and the person suffers from malaria. Now, this is a very good diagram showing you the transmission. So number one, we say here transmission to human injects the sporozoites, and then you see number two, sporozoites enter the liver and infect the hepatocytes. You see hepatocytes are the cells of the liver, hepatic artery, hepatic vein. Hepatocytes, you don't have to know the name, but still it's nice to know different biological term. Number three, liver cells rupture and the merozoites. Merozoites is a stage of the Plasmodium, and that is released. And then they enter the red blood cells. So intra-erythrocytic cycle. Erythrocyte means red blood cells. And then there's a sexual cycle. And then, of course, transmission to the mosquito. So the mosquito takes up the blood, and that is when it's going to now, the person is suffering from malaria and the blood is taken up by this mosquito, and then it's going to multiply inside the mosquito's stomach and then migrate to the salivary glands and then infect somebody else. Look at the life cycle of a mosquito, because that's important. Because if we have to we have to control malaria by actually not having any mosquitoes will control malaria, because mosquitoes are the thing which are the insects which are going to spread it from one person to another. Okay, so now what you see here, the adult mosquito, when the male and the female mate, then the female lays eggs, and the eggs are laid in stagnant water. So wherever there is water, the mosquito lays its eggs in that, not on leaves, not in on the ground, but on stagnant water, and the eggs form a sort of an egg raft, and they float on the surface. It's amazing. And then after a few days hatch out these larvae. These are wrigglers, and they eat a lot. They eat a lot. All the dead debris of plants and organic matter. The pupa is a different sort. It does not feed at all. It does not feed. So it is sort of, I guess it's angry or it's sad, I don't know why, but it does not feed. And then it molts into the adult mosquito. So the adult mosquito, of course, flies off. But these are all the aquatic stages. Aquatic means water, aqua. So the aquatic stages are this, and this. And the adult mosquito, of course, flies off and lives on plant juices. Now this is showing you the stages of the mosquito just to make you understand the sizes. Eggs, first stage larva, second stage larva, third stage, and the fourth stage. And then of course we have the pupa, and then you have the adult mosquito. It just makes you understand a little better how the larva grows, and then how the larva molts and then forms the pupa, and the pupa does not feed. The larva, of course, is a voracious eater and feeds and grows. And then the pupa, and then of course we have the adult mosquito, which is the one which is going to be the vector of malaria. Now a very good drawing of showing you the different stages. Now I like to talk about this. Is number one, in the gut of the Anopheles mosquito, female gametes fuse and the zygote undergoes meiosis. Cell division produce many sporozoites which migrate to the salivary glands of the mosquito. Number two, when the mosquito bites is not a word I like you to use, because mosquito does not bite, it doesn't have any teeth. A dog bites or a horse bites, but not a mosquito. Mosquito sucks the blood of humans. So I would not like you to use the word bites in your exams. So when the mosquito sucks the blood of a human being, the sporozoites pass from the mosquito's salivary glands into the bloodstream and then the liver of the host, of the human host. Number three, these asexual plasmodiums, they called merozoites, produced in the liver enter the blood and then the red blood cells. When the red blood cells burst, spores invade and reproduce asexually inside the new red blood cells. So spores and toxins pour into the bloodstream and the red blood cells rupture. And that's when the person has this very high fever and shivers and is very, very sick. And because the red blood cells are dying, so the person will develop ultimately anemia. Anemia means less oxygen carrying capacity, because the person will have less number of red blood cells because a lot of the red blood cells have been destroyed. Then some spores become male and female gametocytes which enter the bloodstream. If taken up by a mosquito, then they become gametes. So this is the life cycle of the malarial disease, which is called malaria. So in order to control this, we will have to now work on three different lines. Now, in order to control malaria, we have to work on a number of stages, as I just explained. When trying to control malaria, there are three main approaches that you can take. Control against the adult mosquito. So you stop people from being, actually the mosquito should not access humans. So somehow we protect the humans from the mosquitoes, and we'll think of a number of strategies to do that. Then control against the egg and larva to stop the adult mosquito from being born. Because if we destroy the eggs and the larva, so no adult mosquitoes, eggs and the larva don't do us any harm. It's the adult mosquito which harms us. So if we have 0 eggs, 0 larvae, so 0 adult mosquitoes. And then of course we control the Plasmodium, which is the causative organism, by treating people. So we're going to work on three different possibilities: adult mosquito, eggs and larva, and then controlling the Plasmodium. Now, how do we handle this situation? We can prevent it by keeping the mosquitoes from biting, especially at night. And people can sleep under mosquito nets, taking anti-malarial drugs to kill the parasites. So if you live in a place where there's a lot of malaria, if you take the medicine regularly once a week, whenever, if and ever the mosquito sucks your blood and transfers the plasmodium, you'll already have the medicine, so you won't develop the disease. Then eliminating places around the home where mosquitoes breed. So do not have any water, like puddles of water around you or wherever there's stagnant water. So that's where the mosquitoes breed. Then spraying insecticides on home walls to kill the adult mosquito that come inside. Maybe they enter the house and they're inside in your room buzzing around you. Well, that's not a very good idea to have them around. Then sleeping under bed needs nets treated with insecticide. Then wearing insect repellent and long sleeve clothing if out of doors at night. If you are going to be out, then you need to be covering your body so that the mosquitoes do not access to you and do not suck your blood and do not transfer the plasmodium. Now, in order to reduce the population of adult insects, we somehow have to stop the eggs and the larvae hatching. And so we drain stagnant water, and that's one of the ways that we will, if we don't have, but sometimes in countries like Africa, you cannot drain miles and miles of stagnant water. So what you do is you do introduce fish, and these fish will eat the larva and the pupa. So now this is a form of biological pest control. Why? Because you're using one organism against the other. It's a normal prey-predator relationship which you're exploiting. Then you can spray oil on this because you see the larva and the pupa come to the surface to feed. And if there's oil, they're not going to break through the oil, so they probably die because of that. Then of course, this is of course controlling that the humans do not excess, so you sleep under mosquito nets, and that is a very good way of preventing the mosquitoes accessing people when they're sleeping, and then of course they will not suffer from malaria. Now there's another method by which we spray bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis, you have to break it up and make it an easy word for you to remember. In giensis. So this is a bacteria which when sprayed on water is of course will be present in the water, and if you remember, the larvae feed. So when the larva feeds on this water, the bacteria produces a toxin and the larva die. So when the larva die, there's going to be no larva, no pupa. You remember, pupa does not feed. So this bacteria, spraying this bacteria on water is going to kill the larvas, but the larvas, if there are no larvas, then there are no pupas, there are no adult mosquitoes. So you're reducing the population of mosquitoes. You're not actually finishing all of them. You cannot finish all of the mosquitoes, but all you can do is reduce the number of mosquitoes so that less people are then, less people suffer from malaria in countries where this is a very, very serious disease, because it affects the economy of the country. When people are sick, they don't go to work. The hotel industry, the other construction industry, everything is affected. So the economy of a country is affected because there are a large number of people suffering from malaria. Of course, it's not so much here in Pakistan, but more in the African countries where malaria is very, very common. Now, this has been especially mentioned in the syllabus, is that we have to consider this, the definition of parasite. Parasite is a living organism. In this case, we have the Plasmodium is the parasite that infects another living organism and harms the host. Naturally, you see the Plasmodium, when it enters, it destroys the red blood cells of the humans. So the person's red blood cells are destroyed, and it also destroys the liver cells. So the person suffers from less number of red blood cells and liver damage. So parasite, the definition of parasite is like Plasmodium living on a human, so living organism infects another living organism and of course harms the host. So that is the definition, the broad definition of parasite. Next we come to the heading of consequences of deforestation. And it says in your syllabus, describe the consequences of deforestation in terms of its effects on soil stability, climate and local human populations. Now, these consequences of deforestation, number one is soil erosion. Naturally, when you cut down trees on a large scale, then the roots which were holding the soil together are not going to stay there, and whenever there's going to be rain, they're going to be washed away. So that's called soil erosion. then all this soil which is washed away might end up in lakes and rivers, if especially coming from the sides of the mountains. And that is going to, of course, silting of lakes and rivers means that the bed of the lake or the river is going to rise. So then when there's going to be rain in the monsoon season, or in the season when there is a lot of rainfall, then of course it's going to be flooding. So soil erosion, silting up of lakes and rivers, flooding. Now less trees means less transpiration, means less clouds. Less clouds means less rainfall. Then no clouds and earth heats up. Then more carbon dioxide. Now you know carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. So more the carbon dioxide, more there's going to be global warming. Similarly, when we look at the next thing which is in your syllabus is local human populations. Now how the people who are living nearby the forest or who live there in the villages around the forest, how are they going to be affected? Local human population. Now local people obtain their livelihood by using some of the forest products. Maybe they collect the twigs and they burn it and it's used as fuel, or maybe some of the trees are used as timber or making building houses or something. Now when you cut down these trees, you're going to affect their livelihood. Sometimes in the forest, in the roots of these forests, there's a very rare mushroom which grows, and those are sold. They're very expensive, and the people gather those mushrooms and then sell them in the market. And sometimes the fruit, the fruit and the leaves are used as potpourri. They are dried, and then they're used as potpourri. So people living near the forest are actually, it's a sort of a income generating activity to use the products of the forest and then sell them, and then so they'll have to migrate, they'll have to leave those villages, and they'll have to, if you cut down the forest, well, the basic source of income is going to be destroyed. So this is how the local human populations would be affected. Now we talk about the topic of water pollution. Now water pollution has to be discussed under three headings. Number one is sewage, number two is inorganic waste, and number three is nitrogen containing fertilizer. Now the first topic is sewage. Sewage is not household rubbish. Please remember, it's not uneaten food, it's not peels, or if you've had an apple and peeled the apple, or orange peel. Sewage is only urine, feces and bath water. Now urine and feces may contain bacteria, may contain eggs of worms. Now if these pollute a water source, like for instance if these are thrown all into a river and then people drink water from that river, or this is washed into wells and lakes and people drink water from those places, then of course they're going to be suffering from these diseases, and these diseases could be bacterial diseases like typhoid and cholera, and eggs of worms would be taken up and they would of course infect the person. The second heading is inorganic waste. Now this could be plastics, this could be chemicals from factories, and this could be very, very dangerous because this could then affect the aquatic or the marine life and kill a large number of fish and other animals which would be affected by this plastic material and the chemicals. Now nitrogen containing fertilizer, you have to apply this to crops to increase the yield of the crops. Now this is washed away by rain into ponds and lakes, and there it is going to result in eutrophication. And eutrophication is not something very good because it's going to again kill a lot of fish and aquatic life. So nitrogen containing fertilizer resulting in eutrophication. When on the fields nearby a pond or a lake, you have attached fertilizer. Now when this fertilizer is going to be washed into lakes and ponds, we're going to have lots and lots of nitrates and phosphates. Now this is going to result in the growth of an algae, and this algae grows on the top of this pond or lake, and this algae is nothing but unicellular plants. So you get this layer of algae on the top. Now some of the algae is actually not going to be, it's going to be a thick layer, so this lower part of the algae is going to die and is going to fall to the bottom of the pond. Now what we have inside this pond is a large number of bacteria. Now these bacteria feed on these dead algae, dead decomposing matter, and they use up the oxygen. So the bacteria respire and use up the oxygen. Now when the oxygen is depleted, the fish start to die. So the fish start to die because now what has happened? First of all, we had added fertilizer to the crops around this pond. And then what happened is, by rain, this nitrates and phosphates were washed into the ponds and the lakes. So the nitrates and the phosphates, suddenly a lot of nitrates and phosphates in this pond. Now we already had a large number of bacteria, but now suddenly there's a lot of food for these bacteria. So they multiply and the bacterial number of bacteria increase. So the number of bacteria increase, and it increases very, very rapidly. And then these bacteria respire and they use up the oxygen. This is called biochemical oxygen demand. And the more the pollution, the more the BOD, because more the bacteria, more the oxygen is used up. And when this happens, this oxygen is finished, so the fish start to die. Now this process is called eutrophication. And you've got to understand this. It's basically the bacterial number increasing because of the dead organic matter, because of the algae dying and falling to the bottom of the pond, and thus the bacteria number increasing because there's not too much food for them, and then the bacteria respire and use up the oxygen. So the fish start to die. This of course pollutes it further now. Now the next topic that we're going to discuss is air pollution. Now, air pollution is of two types. Number one, greenhouse gases, which is carbon dioxide and methane. And the second air pollution is acidic gases, and these acidic gases result in acid rain. Now, the two acidic gases that we're going to be talking about are sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen. So, air pollution, two different headings: greenhouse gases and acidic gases and acid rain. Now, let's look at a normal greenhouse. A normal greenhouse is made of glass. And what we do is we grow plants in it, but we grow plants because they grow more rapidly than we grow it out in the fields. Why? Because we're going to control the temperature, light, and carbon dioxide. So we're going to control the temperature, we're going to control the light intensity, and we're going to control the CO2 concentration. You can do it in a closed area, but you can't do it in an open field. So what does a greenhouse do? It's made of glass. What does it do? The sun's light rays come, and the light rays enter this greenhouse, and then they are reflected back to the roof of the greenhouse, and then they are reflected back in. So the heat stays in, just like if you leave your car outside in the sun and you go and open the car in June or July, it's going to be really very hot because you closed the windows and you closed the glass windows were closed, and all the heat was coming in but wasn't escaping. So the normal rule is that in a greenhouse, all the heat rays which enter cannot escape. So this place becomes warmer. They're reflected back. The heat rays come in, the light rays come in, but then they hit the roof and then they're reflected back. So this area becomes a little hot, more hot than the outside environment. The outside environment is not that hot, but inside this becomes hot, or the temperature is maintained. So the temperature is a little higher than what it would be outside. Now this of course is what we need, because we need higher temperature for the plant enzymes to work and the plant to mature faster than in what was happening outside in the fields. Plus of course it is protected from rain, it is protected from frost, it is protected from wind. So it is going to help in really having these plants growing more rapidly than it would grow in a normal field outside. So that is what is a greenhouse. And now we have to understand, what did I say here? I said greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. Now how is that going to be? How are we going to understand this in this context? Now let's understand this in the context of the greenhouse gases. Now the sun and the earth, I know I've drawn the sun smaller than the earth, that's not actually right. So when the heat rays from the sun hit the earth, fine, and the heat rays are reflected back. Now if they hit carbon dioxide or if they hit methane, these are called greenhouse gases. If they hit these are reflected back. So the sun's rays hit the earth and then it is reflected back, but when they hit these, they're reflected back. So what do we have? We have had now an increase in carbon dioxide and in methane. So more the carbon dioxide, more the methane, more the greenhouse gases, the earth is going to heat up. The earth heats up, and this is going to result in global warming. Now, global warming is not something very good, because what is going to happen is going to result in flooding, melting up of the polar ice caps, melting of the glaciers. So global warming is going to result in melting of these big reserves of glaciers and the polar ice caps, and this is going to result in flooding. So global warming is all about these two gases, which are called greenhouse gases, because they're going to reflect the heat rays back onto the earth. So the earth is going to become a hotter place. So more the earth heats up, more the temperatures rise, and that was a phenomena which we call global warming, and that is what the countries are getting together, and we try to prevent all this. So more the earth heats up, more the global warming, more is going to be trouble. There's going to be flooding, there's going to be erratic changes of weather and other phenomena which are going to upset the whole balance. So that will complete this video for now, and then we'll continue the rest of this chapter in the fourth video which follows this. Thank you.